what you have to do is measure where you're at from where you started. That's called the gain, right? And so getting into the gain type mindset and just always kind of you can do a gratitude list or just like write out a list of things you accomplished this year. That's really important actually to keep you sustainable.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you're enjoying the show, do me one quick favor and leave us that rating and review. We want to hear from you. We want to know what works for the show and get any feedback that can help you on your investing journey. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Ryan Chaw. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Ryan Chaw is invested in over 10 single-family houses on the side while managing a full-time job as a pharmacist. Now, he helps other people get started in real estate investing at newbierealestateinvesting.com, and he's previously been featured on sites like Business Insider, Yahoo Finance, and Bigger Pockets. Thus, welcome to the show, Ryan Chaw.
Hey, it's an honor to be on the show, John.
Absolutely. Listen, Ryan, I want everybody at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah, so I was inspired to get into real estate investing from my grandpa. He bought a couple properties in the San Francisco Bay Area, and as we all know, those appreciated like crazy. He had them back in the 50s, though, when they were super cheap. The rental income from that was able to help him retire early, but not only that, he was able to help cover part of my college tuition as well as my brother's. So I realized that real estate is the best way to create generational wealth. So I got started in 2016. I graduated as a pharmacist, and then I just started buying one property a year. And I would say around year 5, I started raising capital, taking on partners, and then scaling from there. And now I'm at 13 properties using a rent by the room method. I call it room hacking. And it's making about $55,000 per month in rental income.
Man, I love it. So you talked about your grandfather really getting into real estate back in the 50s. And seeing kind of the benefits that you were able to get, not just from him being able to retire early, but also having some funds to help you with your college education, and then realizing that was something you wanted to duplicate. So you got investing in 2016. You focus on kind of this room hacking approach, which we're going to dive into a little bit more. And you said you're kind of driving a revenue of $55,000 a month. So that's crazy off 13 units. So let's talk about that. You called it room hacking. For someone hearing that term for the first time, what is that?
Yeah, so basically what I do is I'll take a single family home or like a small multifamily, and then I will put in as many bedrooms as I can. Usually it's going to be a large square footage home, but it's going to be around like 6 beds, 2 baths, maybe 7 beds or 8 beds, 3 baths. And what I'll do is I'll rent each room out to college students, and that will double, triple, sometimes even quadruple the rental income that the house could make. For instance, if one room goes for $600, having 6 bedrooms will go for $3,600 per month, while the mortgage might be maybe $1,200 to $1,500 a month.
No, listen, I think it makes a lot of sense if you can get those college students rented by the room. It's kind of like dorm life. So they're kind of used to that approach or are familiar with that approach. So that makes a lot of sense. Where does this work? I mean, I know you're out in California, right? You're out in Sacramento. So is this kind of a high price city only strategy, or are you able to leverage this strategy in other markets?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in California. So I kind of fell into it out of necessity. In order to basically make positive cash flow in California, I had to use this method. But then I figured out, like, why not expand to other markets? California is not the only market. California has a tremendous appreciation, and it's actually what made me into a millionaire, multimillionaire, because all my houses appreciated like over $100,000 each. But then I wanted to also make the cash flow. So I started expanding to markets like in Ohio and Alabama. and took on partners to raise capital. And those ones are very, very, very high cash flowing houses. I would say anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000. I think my highest one is like 4,000 per month in cash flow. Mine, that's after all expenses and everything.
Yeah, I mean, from one house, that's really strong, right? You're basically talking about cash flowing $2,500 to $3,000 a month. That's cash flow. That's not your income. That's
Yeah.
after all your expenses. And I'm assuming that's including after debt service and mortgage payments and all that, right?
Yep. Debt
So,
service,
so that's
home insurance.
strong.
Yeah.
I mean, to get $2,500 a month in cash flow from a house in
Yeah.
Ohio feels like a stretch, so talk to me a little bit more about how you're able to run this same strategy in a market
Sure.
like and Ohio's a big state. I don't want to say it like that, but
Oh
I
yeah.
know specifically you're in Cleveland. So
Yeah,
in a city
Cleveland.
like
Yeah.
Cleveland, I think people would be really surprised that you could cash flow $2,500 a month.
Yeah, exactly. So what I do is I'll choose like a top end college. I will go to like US News top colleges. I'll look through all the colleges there, and I will choose usually a market with a low median home price because that kind of is what creates the cash flow. So the first deal I bought in Ohio, it was $210,000. And then it was about 2,300 square foot or 2,400 square foot. We made it. It started out at 4 bedrooms, and then we added two more to make six, and each rented out for about 600, 650. I think the master is 750. And so we were making 3,750 in rental income when our mortgage was 1,190 per month. So yeah, very, very strong cash flow. You just have to find the right market. You have to know how to judge demand, and you have to know how to do your market.
There are probably two concerns listeners may have listening to the strategy.
Mhm.
One is that, man, it's a lot of turnover, right? You're talking about 6, 7 bedrooms. So renting by the room, that's 6 to 7 different people, different personalities under one roof. How
Mhm.
do you manage that both from a, rent, a room turn, I guess, standpoint, as well as just personality clashes and issues that come up between roommates?
Yeah. So as I said before, it's really important to choose a top college, something that's really ranked high. If you think of Ivy League colleges or maybe medical schools, right? Usually they choose people who have, 4.0 GPA, well-rounded, high SAT scores, very academically smart, so that they're really focused on their degree, getting that MD or PharmD or dental degree or law degree, whatever, right? So these are really high quality tenants that we usually end up in our houses. A lot of them are actually grad students as well, so they're already gone through undergrad, and so they're basically really just focused on getting their doctorate. So that's key number one. Key number two is you got to make sure there's enough, obviously, square footage to make it work out. Because if it's usually my rule is divide by 300. So if you take like, let's say the house is 1,500 square foot, you divide that by 300, that means you can make it a 5 bedroom house. So it's really important to choose a large house, and it also has to be close to campus. I would say that's key number three is, of course, location, right? Students really want to be pretty much walking distance or biking distance to campus whenever possible, so that then when they wake up for the 8 a.m. classes, they can just get to class within like 5 to 10 minutes, right? Key number four, I would say, is usually I do try to kind of pair them up. Maybe all the engineering students in one house, all the doctorates in one house. I also do 1 year leases. So basically, I will do all the leases in between all the way until July 31st. And then from there, everyone's on an August to August lease. They're allowed to sublet during the like summer or spring or whatever if they're not there. But yes, they're all 1 year leases is what I offer. And especially for the price point that I charge compared to on-campus housing, it makes a lot of sense. On-campus housing charges over 1,000 a month, and we're only charging 600 a month. So it just makes sense for students. They get more privacy compared to the dorms because they have their own room, they have backyard, garage, all of that extra space versus the dorms, and they're only half the price. They're only paying half the price essentially.
Yeah. Do you find that your resident base is more locals, more like you said, graduate students? Are there more international students, or people who basically look at this as, I'm only here for school, I'm here for the next 12 to 24 months, and then I'm back wherever I want to
Yeah.
go, or is it really transient from that standpoint?
Yeah, exactly. And you can actually look up the demographics on these colleges and see how many people came from out of state. Typically, the top end colleges, there's a good amount of them who are from out of country, like you said, international students. And there's a ton of them that are out of state as well. Like if you think of John Hopkins, most people will like travel out of state just to go to school at John Hopkins, right? So that ends up being the case. They need local housing. They don't live in that state and they don't live in that city. So a lot of them will need, local housing either on campus or off campus. And
Yeah, I think that
usually universities don't provide enough on campus housing. I would say like probably over 85% of them don't provide enough. If I were to take a guess, yeah, just from my research.
well, and I think enrollment has, generally speaking, enrollment has grown at many universities. So it's not like
Right.
they're building brand new housing units and housing facilities to match that. So it kind of depends on what's happening in that exact market. So the
Yeah.
one concern we talked about, right, which was just managing the different personalities that are living under one roof and just kind of the administrative side of it. I think the other concern people have is just from a regulation standpoint.
Mhm.
In many of these markets, I assume getting 5, 6, 7 people who don't know each other, are not related, living under one roof,
Yeah.
there may be some regulatory restrictions there. Talk to me about that.
Exactly. So it's really important to know what your occupancy limit is for the city as well as the zoning that you're in. So there's different types of zoning, right? Single family home zoning, multifamily zoning. For some of the states that I invest in, if you buy in a multifamily zoning district, you can get something like a change of use permit so that it becomes like a rooming house, like designated as a rooming house. With that being said, there are some states and cities, especially like in California. I think pretty much most of the cities or all the cities. Well, there's a few that don't, but most of the cities will allow for like unlimited, like unrelated tenants. Right. So you have to know what the limit is for unrelated tenants. There's like for one city that I invest in, the limit is three unrelated. And so if you want more than that, you might have to get like a variance or something like that. Or you can buy something like a duplex, right? And then rent out each unit. And so that you can get like six people in there potentially.
That's good to know. It's funny because I did an interview recently, and the person I was interviewing was saying that they had essentially a church, and
Oh,
they were bond. I mean, it wasn't a church; it was a house, but they were creating kind of a senior living facility, and they wanted some of the retiring nuns to stay
yeah.
there. But in that particular city, there was an ordinance that really prohibited five or more unrelated women, not necessarily men,
Oh,
just women from living under
oh,
the same
really?
roof.
Huh,
And
okay.
they thought
There's a
it
lot of
was basically
excess.
an old law,
Yeah.
and the restriction was put in place to avoid having a brothel.
Oh,
And
I
I
get
just
it.
thought
All
it
right.
was so funny just talking to her. Like, so these nuns are trying to live in this house together, and
Yeah.
this old law is stopping them for fear of a brothel.
Oh,
But
wow.
anyway, they had to file all this paperwork to kind of work around that and make it
Yeah,
happen. But
of
obviously, there are a lot
course.
of restrictions that are put in place there for various reasons. So if this is something
Yeah.
that is interesting, whether it's and this is I think true for senior living as well as student living, but when you have unrelated people, you really do have to understand kind of the local legislation about that. What is the ordinance?
Exactly.
Do you need a variance and what that process looks like?
Yeah.
So you've been able to really grow your portfolio, right? And make a lot of money kind of with this strategy, strong cash flow. I know that you're also helping other people with this strategy as well. But
Yeah.
one thing that I know a lot of investors are concerned with is the economy, and when we think about
Sure.
student housing, how resilient is it to a recession or to changes in the marketplace? Talk to us about
Yeah.
that.
So believe it or not, in 2008, when shit hit the fan, people actually went back to school. Enrollments actually went up. The college enrollments went up. So it actually is kind of a recession-proof strategy. If you can't get a job, you're fresh out of high school, you can't get a job. Maybe you want to go to college then, community college or advanced degree, whatever, right? So it turns out, at least the trends that historically is usually when recessions hit, people do go back to school. So it is kind of a recession-proof strategy. The other thing is, you're not really dependent on it's the kid has several ways to pay the rent. They can take out student loans, they can get financial aid, they can get a stipend from the school, or they can have their parents cover the rent. And I would say a majority of cases, it's either like student loans or the parents covering the rent, right? And so even if there is a recession, a student can still take out student loans to cover their room and board and schooling when they go to college. So yeah, from what I've seen so far, it hasn't been an issue.
That's good to know. I mean, I think it's really important for us to understand just different strategies and ways this might work. And, we primarily talk about multifamily investing. And I think the thing that jumps out to me is that, we talk primarily about single family houses so far, but I know you use this strategy with smaller multifamily as well. Are there any
Yeah, exactly.
differences in doing this with maybe a 2 to 4 unit versus doing this with a single family house?
Yeah, so usually like 2 to 4 units. Usually duplexes will have a lot of space. So some of our larger duplexes we're able to get 5 beds, 2 baths on each side. So we'll have 10 students. And then for more like quadruplexes and triplexes, I would say the space kind of starts getting smaller and smaller. You might have a 2 bed, 1 bath. For those, you might be able to add a bedroom in the living room, or like convert the living room slash maybe if there's a family room or bonus room. So usually this strategy works very well for like duplexes, I would say. But even my quads, we're able to add like a third bedroom, and 3 bedrooms times 600 is like 1,800 versus normally you would rent it out for 900 to 1,000.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're kind of coming in and retrofitting the space, changing out the layout maybe a little bit to add that bedroom, to add the space. How much effort goes
Yeah,
into that? I mean, are you bringing in like structural engineers to redesign the entire place, or is it simply a
right.
matter of looking for something that is either close, but maybe we can add a wall here or add a window here? Talk to me about kind of the depths of,
Yeah.
retrofitting these spaces.
Well, sometimes it's actually just repurposing an existing bedroom or existing room. So sometimes a lot of these houses, they'll have like a family room and a living room, or, an office or a bonus room or whatever. A lot of times for those, you just have to furnish it, right? And you're done. That's a bedroom. Other times you might have to put up some drywall. Usually that's actually pretty cheap, depending on the layout of the house and how, crazy you want to get with it. You usually can put up drywall anywhere from, I want to say nowadays, my cheapest drywall was like 1,500, but I've been able to do it anywhere from like 2,000 to, I would say a couple thousand, maybe 5,000, 7,000. It depends on how complicated you get, of course. But yes, if you are like, let's say you're like knocking down walls or something, you'll want to get like a permit as well as like an architect or structural engineer in there, because sometimes there's like support beams and you just obviously don't want to knock down a load bearing wall because that will be structurally unsound, right? But for the
Yeah.
most part, it's putting up walls, not like knocking down walls, because you're just literally dividing. You can divide a large living room in half, maybe, and so all you do is put up a piece of drywall, and yeah, as long as the room meets the minimum bedroom requirements, 70 square foot, 7 foot height, it has to have some sort of egress, right? Um, and it's actually pretty simple. You don't even need a closet for bedrooms, believe it or not.
Lots of great information right there.
Yeah.
We talked about working with newer investors and helping people out from an education standpoint. Your website is newbierealestateinvesting.com. What kind
Yeah.
of information do you share with investors on that?
Yeah, so I share with investors my method for identifying really good houses, where this strategy will work, identifying the best college with like the best ROI that you can get in whatever state you're looking at. And then obviously how to find a deal. We go through the deals together, and I show examples as well to my email list. And then we'll break down the numbers, go through how I renovate these properties, market them, and then eventually manage them, right? So you could either hire out a property manager, or you can maybe use a VA team, or you can use software, depending on how big you are. I would say if you're 5 properties or less, you can still manage the full, like everything by yourself, even if you have a full-time job, because that's literally what I did when, I'm still a pharmacist. I work 32 hours, but I'll be retiring in about a couple weeks or so. And yeah, I was able to build a portfolio of, I would say, at least 30 something tenants by just doing this on the side while I was working a full-time job.
Give me one insight or lesson learned on managing this on the side, given that you got a full-time job and
Mhm.
some of these properties are, halfway, if not three-quarters of the way around the country. So how are you managing that?
Right.
Give me one tip or insight you've learned.
Yeah, so it's really important to basically find a team. I know I say like manage it yourself, but you have to have good people, right? You have to have a rock star real estate agent, a good lender, a good contractor, general contractor. And that's really key. The markets where I was able to really get those, good people in place, right people, right seats, I've been able to really scale faster because if you have like a really good agent, for example, they might find off-market listings for you, and so you get a better price for them sometimes. They're also really good at negotiating the deal so that when you go to the seller, you're like, hey, there's all these issues with the house. Can you give us like 8,000 or 10,000, 15,000 towards the closing costs on this house or repairs that need to be made? They'll put the money in escrow and then that will be dispersed at closing, earmarked to maybe replace the roof or whatever. And then you have a good, lender. You want to have a lender who does like DSCR loans, and you want to have a lender who does conventional loans, because depending on where you are at in life and what your income is, you may be approved for one, but not the other, right? DSCR loans, they will use the rental income that the property will generate to approve you. And there's some rules around that, by the way. So like if you buy a quadruplex, usually at least 2 out of the 4 units have to be occupied in order for you to use a DSCR loan. That's why you need to have both types of lenders. And then the final guy, I would say, yeah, is the contractor. So you need somebody who will get started as soon as possible on the property, because let's say he doesn't start for a month. Well, that's $3,600 per month lost, right? So after 2 months, you could be losing out on over $7,000 in opportunity costs. So very important you have a contractor who's, serious, who will get the job done on time and on budget. I usually ask for references, and I'll ask those references. Hey, did this guy finish the project on time? Did he finish on budget? The original budget that he stated, or did he have to make changes later? And so once you find your team, those top 3 people, you can scale to infinity.
I love it, man. Great tips there. It always comes down to a team. I mean, even if you're self-managing or doing it all yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you still need people. I think this big takeaway there is that no matter if you're the one in the driver's seat, you still need a team. And in your case, it's finding a great agent, finding great contractors, finding great lenders that can help you structure the deal and get the financing you need, and then ultimately implement that business plan. So really great insights right there. If you want to learn more, you've got a guide that's available. So you can go to newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide and check that out over there. Right now, we're going to move to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Yep.
Give me a
Ready to go.
failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Yeah, the failure I would say is on my very first property. I did that one, not because I didn't really have a mentor, right? So the first property I put like 100,000 down, even though it was a $262,000 property. I put over $30,000 in repairs on it because there's a lot of red flags that I missed on the home inspection report. And so I would say, if you're just getting started, really work with your agent closely and work with a contractor closely to see and to do your due diligence, essentially. Like, how much is all of this stuff going to cost? Like, how much does it cost to replace the sewage line if I have to replace that? If we don't have an AC unit, are we going to need AC? How much is that going to cost? What's the current status of, the current AC unit, or how old is the roof? Those are kind of the questions I usually ask. And I always order a sewage lateral line inspection on homes like 1980s or older, because I've had, I would say, 4 houses where I had to, or like 3 or 4 houses where I had to replace the entire, part or the entire sewage line because of a sewage line break. So it's always important to get that inspection and also get follow-up inspections if the home inspector says, you need the roof inspection or the electricals don't look right, or there might be something going on with the I don't know, the furnace or something like that, right? So I think that's the most important thing, is knowing how to do your due diligence, maybe read up on it, but also like have a good contractor and agent go through the house and kind of identify issues.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
I would say, let's see, a digital or sorry, what was the other?
Mobile. Yeah,
Oh,
just
mobile
digital or
resource.
mobile
Yeah,
resource.
honestly, it sounds kind of simple, but honestly, looking on Zillow every day, or the MLS, right? So an agent can set you up with the MLS listings, but I highly recommend you hop on Zillow every single day to look at deals, because a lot of people, especially in this market, and I would say just in general, nobody's looking every single day on Zillow. Most people aren't. So if you can get the house, you know, basically, a contract on the house within like 1 or 2 days, you basically beat out anybody else who waited like 4 or 5 days to see the house. And so I found a lot of really great deals by just simply doing that, getting on it faster than everyone else.
Yeah, that speed is important there. Give me the book you recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Ooh, I would have to say Rich Dad Poor Dad. Still, I know a lot of people say that, but that's the one I technically gifted the most to like maybe my older friends and whatnot.
All right. What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Ooh, I would say, if you ever read, oh, this is another good book, The Gap and the Gain. If you ever read that book, if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you read it. Basically, it goes over this concept that there's a gap and a gain. The gain is measuring backwards, meaning this is where I started, this is where where I'm at now. Look at all my accomplishments, and so you have to celebrate those wins, right? The gap is when you measure forward. That's what you're not supposed to do. Basically, you have this ideal, this is where you're at now, and most people they'll measure this space. They'll say, oh, I'm not where I need to be. But the problem with ideals is you never reach an ideal. Like there's always the next goal, right? So you're never going to celebrate. What you have to do is measure where you're at from where you started. That's called the gain, right? And so getting into the gain type mindset and just always kind of, you can do a gratitude list or just like, write out a list of things you accomplished this year. That's really important actually to keep you sustainable.
I love that. The Gap in the Game. We'll make sure to check that out and put that on the list there. Give me a daily habit. Did I just ask that?
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's what you asked.
Okay. Sorry, I was like, did you say the book or did you just say the daily habit? All right. So let me go back.
I said both.
Give me your number one insight for, I'm going to call it student housing, or you called it room hacking. So let's call it room hacking.
Yeah. The number one tip for that, oh man, there's so many tips for that actually, but finding a top college, being very close to the college, right, when you purchase a property, and then the property should have a good amount of square footage, so you can get at least 5 or 6 bedrooms in there.
There we go. All right, you are out in Sacramento. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Ooh, there's a lot of good ones. Man, there's a lot of like good Korean places like in Rancho Cordova. One is called like Soul Zip. That one's pretty good. I'll just say that for now.
All right, sounds good. Well, listen, Ryan, you gave us a lot of great information. This room hacking concept, I think, is really intriguing. We've heard it a couple times before, but I think what you've landed on is a more sophisticated and specific approach where you're targeting these higher end universities. You're making sure this property is close to that. You've got a framework of 300 square feet per person that you're targeting, and you're looking at cities where the median household cost is lower than maybe in more higher priced markets. That way you can get really good cash flow. And I think that's a strong approach, and you said that you're cash flowing anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000 per home. And again, you're investing in markets like Huntsville, Alabama, and Cleveland, Ohio, and markets like that. And I just think that's phenomenal to get that kind of cash flow in a single house. Again, if people want to learn more about you or your strategy, they can check you out at newbierealestateinvesting.com. And you've got a guide, which is newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. side. Ryan,
Yep.
thank you again for being a great guest and coming to the show. We look forward to staying in touch and hope you have a great day.
Thank you again, John. It was an honor to be on your podcast.